Hi everyone, I'm going to do a tutorial here on doing flatbed scanning. I showed this in class this week, and I just thought I'd do a review for those of you who are working on your assignment for this coming week. So the first thing is to locate a computer that has a scanner. I'm using a Epson V600 scanner, flatbed scanner, that will also, it'll scan prints, but it'll also scan film. First thing you need to do if you're going to set up the scanner or to get going with scanning is to go to your applications folder where the Epson software will be found, which it'll be in a folder called Epson software. And the software you're looking for is Epson Scan. So double click on that, open it up. And this will be the window that you'll see in the Mac lab on the computers there. This is not the best way to work with this software. So what you should do is come up here to this drop down and go from the full auto mode. This will be the default when you open it up. And it'll go to, you want to take it to professional mode. And when you do that, it's going to be a much more complicated and definitely a lot more options in this, I guess, in this dialog box. So the first thing that you want to take a look at is, let's ignore this settings right now. That would be if you were doing regular scanning, you would set up different presets. The document type is going to be reflective. I'm going to be scanning a print. Obviously, if you were doing film, you'd choose film. Document source is only one, and that's the scanner itself. The auto exposure type, you have two choices, the photo and the document. The document is used for basically non-continuous tone documents. So for example, a book that would, there's no grayscale, it's really just black or white. That's really what they mean by a document. Now, depending upon the type of image that you're going to be working with, I just turned on this, see what was here, speed priority scanning. I'll turn that off. That doesn't really mean anything. Depending upon your source material, color print, if it is a color print, you would want to use a color setting here. You don't really need to go to 48-bit. It's going to make your files a lot larger. So if you're scanning a color print, then choose 24-bit color. I'll just talk a little bit about this color smoothing. Typically, if you're going to be scanning off of a magazine or any, not a photo print, but a print that's, say been printed with what's referred to as a offset color, which is a 4-color ink process, CMYK. That printed material is made up of really tiny dots. They're called halftone dots. And what the color smoothing will do is it'll blend those dots together. Now you get a little bit of a blurring with it, but that's what that's there for. So if you're scanning from a printed document, but what I want you to do in this assignment is to use a photo print, so you don't have to worry about color smoothing. If you're scanning a black and white image, now that would, you may have a black and white image or a file which or say a print which has been faded. I would still encourage you to photograph, or sorry, not photo, but to scan it in color, because then the ultimate goal here is going to be for you to demonstrate that your skills. So probably a good idea, even if you're doing a black and white print, to do it in color. So I'm going to choose 24-bit color. Resolution is rather important because you have to think about the output. Now, if you know that you're going to be printing and you're going to be converting this scan ultimately into a print, you definitely want to be sure that you're scanning at a resolution which is higher than 300, because 300 is the resolution that you're ultimately going to need for printing. But it's a little bit tricky because you may be scanning something which is very small, and in order to do that, you would want to increase the resolution. Say you want to make your go from your original to something and you want to make it bigger, you want to basically blow it up, you want to magnify it or enlarge it, you need to then go even higher than 300. 300, if we scan here at 300, let me just do a quick preview. So let me just set up my scanner. I'll put my print in there, and okay, so I have my print in my scanner now, and I'll just quickly do a preview. And so now I have this black and white print, and it actually has the tone of the print. If I had chosen grayscale over here, then it would just be gray. I want you to, if you're going to be doing color, I'll show you how to do the converting to black and white. So here's the preview. Now the print here, the size of the print is probably about 4 by 6 in terms of the image area. And what you need to do is you need to choose the marquee. You can just highlight this, click and drag, and we'll get the dancing ants here. And basically this is telling the scanner which area to scan. You don't have to scan the whole area. It's wasteful, it takes a lot of time. If I wanted to enlarge this image, in other words, if I want to double the size, what I need to do is I need to scan at a resolution that's higher than 300. If I scan at 300, then and I want to basically get it back, just reproduce it, then it would be the same size, exactly the same size. So if I double the resolution here and go up to 600, let's do this. I'll scan this at 600. So I'll do a scan. And now the next file that you see here, and this is again kind of useful, the default will come in as pictures for the location. You probably want to get rid of that and go to other. I'm going to choose my desktop. Go here, and once it highlights the desktop, I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call this scans, and it'll put it on my desktop. So on the desktop there'll be a folder called scans, and that'll be where the scans will ultimately go. It's a good idea to figure out exactly where your stuff is going to be, otherwise it can be confusing. You do your stuff and then, oh, where did it go? I'm going to call this scan test, and I'm going to start it at 1. So this little click will give you a starting point. Now also, when you open this up, chances are it's going to show JPEG up here in the image format. You don't want to scan to a JPEG. You want to scan, open up this dialog box here, and then come down to TIFF. And this is the proper file format. Think of TIFF as like a raw file. It'll have a lot of data, a lot of information. Okay, so I'm going to click OK here, and now the scan will start. So I'm scanning this at 600 dpi, or pixels per inch. So it's twice the resolution of a print. So here is the scan that came in. Here's my desktop. Here's scans, and I have my scan test right here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this in Photoshop. So I've got Photoshop running down here, and I'll click and drag this icon, just drop it in on top of Photoshop, and now it should open up. I'm getting this dialog about mismatching. I'm just going to convert this to the working space. And so now here is my scan. Now if I look up here in the rulers, I've got my rulers turned on. That's Command R. Command R will turn that off and on. And this is set up so that it's showing pixels. If I right click on my mouse, I can turn this into inches. Now if I come up here to image and choose image size, this will give me a readout of the size in inches. You can see it's 4 by 6 at 600 pixels per inch. But if I know, and this is important, you need to always make sure the resolution is going to be at 300 if you know you're going to be printing. So I'll come in here and change this resolution. Make sure that resample is not turned on, because if I resample this to 300, what's going to happen is it's going to keep the original dimensions of the print, but it's going to downsample. In other words, it's going to make it it's going to throw away pixels and bring it down to 300. So turn off resample. Now you can see if I change the resolution to 300, it basically doubled the size of the image. So if I click OK, you're not going to see any difference except that in the rulers. Now if I printed this at 300, here's my resolution here, image size at 300, now it's going to print at 9 by 13 inches. So the reason we can do this, and there's nothing is happening in terms of either adding or deleting pixels, is because the original scan was a higher resolution than the final print. So if you know you want to enlarge something off of the scanner, you have to go higher than 300. And it's just simple math. If you go from 300 to 600, it will double the size of whatever you're scanning. If you go to 1200, it's going to enlarge whatever you're scanning by 4 times. So you can just, these are just multiples of 300. Just think of it that way. If you end up going, just divide 300 by whatever the resolution is that you want to scan at, and that'll tell you how big it's going to go. Okay, so that's an example of scanning at 600. My suggestion to you, whatever you're scanning for the assignment, my suggestion to you would be to scan it at, say, 1200, 2400 perhaps. I know it's going to be overkill, but you can also make your image smaller. So let's do that. I'll show you how to do that. I'm going to close this one off. Don't save it. I'll go back to my Epson scan here. Now this time what I'll do is I will scan this at 1200. So now this is going to be 4 times bigger. When I then change the resolution in Photoshop back down to 300 for printing, it's going to take, so this is scanning, when it's doing the scanning, it's scanning a very high resolution, so there's going to be a lot of pixels. So I'll go to 1200 and I'll scan this again. Now this time I'll just leave it at test scan test number 2. I'll know that'll be the bigger one. Now because it's scanning at a higher resolution, the scanner is going to take a longer time doing this. Okay, so now here is the scan that's right here. Now this is 134 megabytes. The first one was 33, so you can see it basically as we have scanned it at 4 times the resolution. Now the file size is 4 times the size. So I'll drag this down to Photoshop to open it up and apply the okay. So now again it's going to show in the rulers that it's the same as the original size, but if I look in the image size dialog box, the resolution is 1200. This was the resolution that was set in the scanner. So making sure resample's not turned on, change this to 300, and now you can see that if I printed this at 300 pixels per inch, the size of this print would be 18 inches by 26. Now obviously the quality is going to be dependent upon my original, so obviously this is a print. If I zoom in here, I'm pressing Command 1 to zoom into this at 100%. You can see this was actually a film enlargement, so you can see that there's a lot of grain in here. That's from the film. A lot of little bit of dust spots here as I zoom in. If I press Command 0, it will zoom back out to fill whatever the size of the window is. So those are good keystrokes to know. So that's basically it in terms of doing scanning. Just be sure that you set up the scanner correctly. Going back here to the Epson scan software, my suggestion to you would be to set it at 24-bit color. Resolution, obviously, oh yes, I was going to show you how to basically make this smaller. So say for example you've done all your retouching, you've done your restoration. If you want to change this down, now if I have said to you in your assignment you need to be changing this or submitting this as a print, which is 8.5 by 11, I'll come back here to image size and I'm going to turn on resample, and what this will do is it will change, it will basically set up the file so it'll either get, in this case it's going to get rid of pixels, it's going to throw pixels away, and it's going to make the image whatever size I decide it's going to be. So if I know I want 8.5 by 11, so the width is going to be 8.5, and I'll change this to 8.5. And now this, by default, because this is locked on, if I change one dimension, it's going to keep the same proportion. So now it's changed it to 12. Well, 12 is bigger than 11. So if I know 8.5 is going to give me too much, it's not going to be bigger than 11. I'll double click, I'll make this 11. And now if my height is 11 inches, my width is going to go to 7.6, and that's okay. Then I don't have to crop. I click OK, and now it's going to resample, which means it's going to throw away the pixels. And now at 300 pixels per inch, this document is going to print out at 7.6 by 11 inches. Click OK. Again, now it's basically thrown away the pixels. It's going to be a smaller picture. Command 0 to zoom in. And now if I go to 100%, there's my picture, and you can see a lot more detail because now it's actually made it smaller. So now it's a smaller image. But it will now print when I print it at 300, because I know 300 is the resolution for printing. Now when I print it, it's going to be 7 something by, and if I go down here, it goes all the way to 11. So that's 7.5 by 11. So I took a 4 by 6 and I have basically made it larger. Anyway, I hope that helps. Get in touch with me if you have any questions. Thanks.